What's going on, guys? Welcome to the Creating Wealth Podcast, where I, Kyle, from Curtin Real Estate, interview local top dogs in the real estate investing, wealth building, and personal finance industries. Let's build together. What's up, guys? This week's guest on the podcast has an unheard of story with an absolutely unreal start to his real estate investing career. Matt has jumped into real estate with both feet on his first deal into a commercial property. In this episode, we get into Matt's incredible story so far, from showing his drive and desire to make an impact in the real estate investing world by doing something very creative and unique to find potential capital partners, to finding and structuring a commercial partnership deal, to the insane power of networking. This is a super crazy episode, and I hope you enjoy. Let's jump right into the episode. What's up, guys? Welcome to the Creating Wealth Podcast. Today, I have the great pleasure of chatting with Matt Davis, an awesome Lowell-based investor with a very unique first property. I'm extremely excited to talk with him. What's going on, Matt? How you doing, man?
I'm doing great, Kyle. I've been really looking forward to this ever since about a week ago when you mentioned, hey, you want to come on? I've been looking forward to it, so I'm happy to be here.
Awesome, man. The pleasure is all mine, seriously. I'm so excited to hear more of your story. I'm pumped. But yeah, so, to kind of jump right in, if you could, tell us what got you into real estate, kind of your story and, yeah.
Yeah, no, for sure. So I'll give you from going back all the way to when I was in college, is when I first kind of caught the bug. And so basically how that happened is I had always been interested in finances. I wanted to do well, and I was ambitious ever since I was at a young age. And I was originally looking at the stock market, and I was trying to figure out, how do I start to do well in the stock market and things like that. That's really all I knew of at the time. And I actually started listening to podcasts way back then, and it was investing podcasts, stuff like that. I just wanted to educate myself.
Yeah. And
eventually from that, I think it was Biggerpockets. It might've been another real estate show. I think it was Biggerpockets though. And I heard that, and I became a little interested in it. And that was right around the time where a family member of mine mentioned the book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
No.
And so like everybody else, I read that damn purple book.
Yep.
And sure enough, it snowballed into what eventually became an obsession over, the second half of my college career and beyond, of just reading every book I could about real estate, listening to every podcast I could. I was walking a 20-minute walk to class, 4 classes a day, all senior year. I was just going back and forth with the headphones in, listening to podcasts. And I learned a ton. And when I graduated, I was kind of ready to take my first steps, but I wasn't sure where to start. So I went and I got myself a job as an engineer, because that's what I went to school for. And then, once I had a job and I got my own apartment, stuff like that, I decided to give myself a kick in the butt and dive in. And so the way I started and took those first steps is I started going to meetups. So I went to one in Rhode Island. It was pretty good. It was kind of a long drive for me. Then I found the Pints and Properties meetup in Lowell, run by John Bambachi. And I went to that and I met him, and just kind of wanted to get out there, start to meet some people, figure out, okay, when I'm ready someday, when I'm ready to approach an agent or a broker and want to make that move, I want to be prepared, right? And so I wanted to, really be able to say, okay, this is what I'm looking for. Here's how I'm going to close it, and all that. And sure enough, after that first meetup, I get a call on the phone from John, like, hey, Matt, I got your number at the meetup. Do you want to meet for coffee? And I was thinking in my head, like, oh boy, I'm not ready for this yet. I was going to ask him for that, but in a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
So I said, yeah, for sure. I'll meet you for coffee. And we set up a meeting at Panera Bread one morning, early in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
And so from there, I started, I actually built a presentation in PowerPoint, right? Like I made maybe 5-6 slides about, this is me. I basically gave him my own personal financial picture about, what my investments were at the time. I didn't have a lot of money, but I had some.
Yeah.
And then, all that, and I laid it out I had explained the burst strategy. I was going to tell them how I wanted to do the burst strategy. And so I go to this meetup and I printed out the slides, just like one slide per page. And there's like 6 of them. And I sit down with them and I start like walking him through like, hey, this is what I want to do. And at the end of the meeting, he goes, Matt, this is the first time I met someone for coffee and they brought slides. So, I think I showed him what I was trying to show him is, hey, I'm serious about this. I'm not kicking tires. Like I'm trying to, make this happen.
Yeah.
And I think he got the gist of that. So starting then, he set me up for just, MLS updates for, I think at the time it was like 3 to 6 family properties. He convinced me I could do commercial. Commercial is 5 units and more. I was thinking 3s and 4s, and he's like, oh, just look at 5s and 6s just in case. And so he set me up for some MLS updates. I was looking through them and I just started crunching numbers like every day. Every one that came in, I was just like, I had a big spreadsheet and it just brought up like basic stats, like, hey, how many of the bedrooms, what are the fair market rents? According to fair market rent, what's gross rent multiplier, all these different like metrics, just so I could compare them. Yeah. And then I, had color coded the columns so you could like kind of see when one stood out. Usually when one stood out, it's because it like needed a gut rehab or something that was major wrong with it. I was like, oh, the numbers really work on this one.
This is awesome.
It doesn't have a roof, but
Yeah.
Anyway, so meanwhile, I had known that, okay, so in order to close something bigger, I was going to need money. And I might need more than just my own money because I had some, like I said, I had some, not a lot. Certainly not enough to put, 20% on a commercial property.
Yeah.
I did have some people in my network though that were investors, not real estate investors, but they were, somewhat savvy, interested in, investing their money and looking for places besides where most of their money currently was, which was the stock market. And so what I did was, over the course of these years of me, studying real estate, reading books and stuff, I was always talking about it around people, everyone in my network. I just, oh yeah, this is what I'm interested in. So these people already knew that for 3 years, 4 years at this point, like Matt was always talking about real estate, So, so basically what happened from there was, I reached out to a couple of the people who seemed more interested and I said, hey, do you want to like talk about like how these strategies work? I'll teach you kind of more of the details, what I'm into. I didn't mention I was going to try to get money from them at that point. And so sure enough, we met for a drink or for dinner or whatever. And I gave him some slides,
nice,
similar slides to what I showed John, but a little bit more different. And I was basically just teaching him like the very basic stuff that, a lot of the people in this community, people probably watching this show, like what is the burst strategy? What is, a cap rate? Like what are the basic fundamentals of investing in real estate? Mm-hmm. And showing them how, you can get really good returns. There's risk, obviously, that's different risk. And you have an element of control that you don't have with a stock portfolio. And so I was just kind of, just kind of laying out the business and kind of explaining to them why I thought it was cool. And they were, agreeing. And I was saying, using wording like, someday if I were to raise money for one of these, I explained like what a syndication. Someday if I were to raise money, maybe we could talk about that. And then that was it. So I kept doing those two things kind of simultaneously until at one point, and this was I had already submitted offers and other stuff that didn't work out at this point, but I got an email from John. It was like, hey, this might be a good opportunity for what you're trying to do in Lowell. That's literally the word for word. I memorized the email just because it was a big email in my life.
Yeah.
And sure enough, that ended up turning into the acquisition of a really cool 6-unit multifamily property. Phenomenal deal, great price. Everything just worked out perfectly. And I think it was all because the only reason that came to me was because I was putting myself out there, talking to a ton of people. And sure enough, something came along. And I think, if there's a lesson to be learned, there's no one surefire thing that's going to be easy, that's going to get you a good deal. But if you're always out there, you're always talking to people, always doing everything you can, so you're putting yourself in a position where the odds are in your favor. And so it's not that you're lucky, it's that you built really good odds for yourself.
Yeah.
And eventually something comes along.
That's
So,
incredible, man.
yeah. So yeah, that's kind of how that went. And so, I guess I'll keep going with the story and talk about this deal and what made it unique. So basically, this was a property that was being sold by a municipality. It was being sold by the city.
Mm-hmm.
And it was something that wasn't on the MLS. It was publicly listed and publicly out there on the internet. But it wasn't where a lot of people were looking. And so the competition was a lot lower. I wasn't competing against 10,000 brokers in the state of Massachusetts, however many in Massachusetts, who are scouring for deals every day and putting in offers. It was me and they had a briefing for this project that the city was doing, basically divesting, somewhere between 10 and 25 properties or something. I don't know. And at the meeting, there was like 4 people there.
Nice.
I was like, okay, so nobody knows about
this is cool.
So we go out and we tour some of them. We see, what are the different ones out there. I ran numbers on them all. They all worked out really well. And you had to put together this big proposal about who are you, showing evidence that you can close it, showing you have proof of funds, financing set up, explaining what you want to do with it. And the city was particularly careful about these properties because they wanted them to turn into housing that was good, affordable housing for people that need to be housed in the city, and not going in the wrong direction and taking away supply from who really needed it.
Mm-hmm.
And they were also really conscious of the people who were living there and wanted them to stay. They didn't want someone who was going to buy it and kick everyone out and make them all, crazy expensive, fancy apartments and go from there. So, and so, it puts together this whole proposal, explain, different parts of it. I talked about my team at the time. I had all these great people on my team, but they didn't know they were on my team. I had John as a real estate expert. Yep. I had, my uncle is a CPA who I didn't even tell him I did this, but I had him as like my finance expert CPA on my team. I had an attorney who was like John's closing attorney, Doug. Yep. So he was like on my team so I had this whole team of people, and sure enough, the offer was accepted. And little did I know that created that was the start of the most intensive, long waiting period closing process ever. Oh, it took like 14 months or something to go from that point all the way to the closing. And it was a mixture of COVID slowing things down, poor communication. I feel like the people on the other side weren't all that invested in what was going on and all this. And so what ended up happening was, I needed to get money together. So I needed to have this in order to actually, going back a little bit, in order to submit this offer, I had to basically show proof of funds for an amount of money I didn't have. The property was being sold. I was putting in an offer for $665,000. That meant that I needed a down payment of 100 something, 20. At the time, they were doing 20%. They ended up changing that on me, and I had to find even more money. But basically, I needed to show that I had proof of funds for money that I didn't have. So I went out to the same people that I had sat down with, and walked them through real estate. And I said, hey, like, if I found a deal that had all these really cool, like, metrics, right? I had this cap rate and this and all that. If that came along, and it really did offer these, 12, 13, 14, 15% returns, cash on cash, all this great stuff, would you perhaps be interested? Maybe. And they're like, oh yeah, maybe. And I was like, okay. So I said, how about we do this? How about, I said, basically, to get one of these things under contract, I need to have, the ability to convince a banker and a seller that I can actually close it. Yeah. How about I have you sign a non-binding letter of intent stating basically, my name is this, I have this much money that I would be willing to invest, assuming I, saw a property that met my underwriting criteria. This is valid until so-and-so. And it was all non-binding. It said the first word in it was, this is a non-binding letter of intent. I wanted them to very much feel like, this isn't a contract I'm making you sign. I'm not trying to come after you legally. There's no commitment here. This is just a letter saying you're interested.
Yeah.
But sure enough, that letter, and then once I got it, I said, oh, can I see proof of funds too? Can I see a bank statement? They're like, oh yeah, sure. So now I had proof of funds from investors who didn't even know they were going to be investing in me yet of all this money. And sure enough, now I had at least enough to get to the next step, which was put in the offer, get it accepted, get a bank to take me seriously, and do all those things that are so important. So, I think that was a really key strategy that, I haven't heard other people mention before, but it was basically my way of getting proof of funds without getting someone to commit to investing money or like writing me a check, anything like that. It was like a good first step and to transition these investors into moving forward. Right.
Yeah.
And so I used that. I got the offer accepted, like I mentioned. I got the banks on board. I got term sheets, all this stuff from, everything in place, and was ready to go. And it was just a lot of waiting. It was like 14, 15 months of me sitting on the edge of my chair, like, when are all my dreams going to come true? Like, this is all I wanted at the time.
Yeah.
Like, I was waking up in the middle of the night thinking about it, like going home and like sitting down, like, when's this going to close? Like, come on. Like, and every time it got closer, I mean, we started with a closing date of May. I think it was like March. At a closing date of March 20th, let's say. And then they didn't. So I signed the purchase and sale agreement, and they didn't countersign it and send it back until March 21st, the day after it was supposed to close. So now I had this purchase and sale agreement that had a closing date that already passed, but it was now signed. And so now I actually had a PNS, which is the big, the big first difficult part was getting that contract, because having the letter saying my proposal was accepted was good, but it wasn't quite a contract. It wasn't binding. It wasn't. So now I had this predated contract, and sure enough, everything falls into place over the course of a long period of time, and really great, awesome hard work by our attorney.
Shout out to Doug.
Shout out to Doug and Doug Mercurio. I got his pen right here. And so next thing you know, we closed, and it was January 12th of this year. So we're coming up in a few days on 6 months since that closing. And what I didn't mention is in the same package, I also put in an offer on a 2-family. That was also accepted, and I closed that a couple months later, actually on my birthday, March 18th.
Nice.
I closed, and it was the best birthday present to myself ever. So here I am now. I got these 2 properties, a 6 and a 2, both great. All the bedrooms in both buildings are either 3 or 4 bedrooms. So there's a total of 27 bedrooms between the 2 of them. They're cash cows. They spit out plenty of money every month. And while I haven't had the opportunity quite yet to pocket any of that because I keep investing it back into the properties, the numbers are there, and the numbers look good, and the numbers are what I thought they were, which is really encouraging, and also encouraging to my investors. Yeah. So the only other thing I want to mention is kind of how I structured this with these investors, because I also thought this was really unique. And maybe it wasn't unique. Maybe it was vanilla. I don't know. But the attorney had never heard of this. So, and I kept asking, hey, can you help me do it exactly like this? And he's like,
yeah,
sure. It was difficult enough to try to get someone else to make an operating agreement for me. So I just took a template and adjusted it. And, over the course of 15 months, I had plenty of time to nail down exactly how this will work. Yep. And it did. But basically, there was a problem. So I needed to raise more than half of the money, like 60, 70% of the money I had to raise, because I only had enough money to bring. I brought 100,000 to the table, and my investors brought 135. So there's $235,000 total that went into this. And so I brought less than half. But the problem was, I couldn't have any of my individual investors own more than 20% of the property, because if they did that, they were going to have to become key principals on the mortgage. They were going to have to guarantee it. And I didn't want to ask that of them. I wasn't going to ask them. In my brain, that was off the table to ask one of these investors, oh, by the way, do you want to like co-sign the mortgage on this behemoth? Right. So I structured it in a way where basically, I'll give you an example. One of the investors brought $100,000 to the table. So let's say, I'll make the numbers easy. Say it's $1 million purchase price. They brought $100,000 to the table. They get 10%. Mm-hmm. Easy enough. The portion of it that is the mortgage, the 80% loan to value or 75% loan to value, was allocated towards me as my ownership. So I ended up with 84% point something percent. And they ended up cumulatively with the other however many percent. And this enabled it. So basically, even though I only brought 40% something of the money,
yep,
they, I walked away with 80 something percent of the equity, which worked in my favor. But then you'd think, hold on, it sounds like these guys are getting ripped off. I made it work for them in a really creative way by giving them a really good preferred return. So basically what this was an agreement, and this is what really made the whole thing appealing to them, was that it's structured in such a way where I can't distribute one penny from this business to myself unless they're making a minimum of 8% on their money. Oh. So there would have to be a serious problem based on the numbers with this company for it to be, producing so little money that that's not happening.
Yeah.
So, but nonetheless, it gave them that encouragement that right off the top of the cash, 8% goes to you guys. And it's phased out in a certain way so that it's not like that forever, but it kind of solidifies their return. And basically they have to get 100% return or more before that goes away. Yeah. So it works for them. And that's basically their way of kind of getting their money back. They hold their ownership. They keep their ownership forever unless they sell it to someone else or me or whoever. And so it kind of works for everyone. And we thought it was a really good way to do it. I thought it was a really good way to do it. And it made it so that the bank would lend to us. The bank wasn't going to require them to co-sign. And yet we still were able to bring all the money together and make it happen.
Wow.
Yeah. So yeah, kind of a long story, but I think that's like the gist of it. I'm trying to think if I missed any of the good parts, but now we have it. It's operating great. We've had a little bit of difficulty leasing a couple of the empty units. I'm not sure why we did one unit over, kind of on a budget, tried to lease it. It was a bad time of year to be leasing. This was January, February, March. Not a lot of people are moving.
Yeah.
It took a while. We ended up leasing that one just fine. A few college students that just moved in. And now another one became vacant last month. We turned it over in like 2 weeks, maybe a little more. And by turn it over, I mean, I had it ready to put on the market again. Mm-hmm. Pretty extensive, at least for me. I have no background in construction. I don't know I painted once because my dad made me when I was a kid. Like, like I didn't have that much background, but I figured it out as I went. I am handy because I'm an engineer. I've been building stuff in college and my job. So I know how to use tools and stuff, but I kind of figured it out as I went, brought in granite counters, all this stuff, and plumbing and whatnot, and made the second one a little bit nicer, and stainless steel, granite, all that. And so hopefully that'll rent soon, but it's on the market right now as we're recording this. Maybe not once this gets released, we'll see. but yeah, that's kind of where it stands. The other one was a 2-family house hack. So I live there, and it's also two 4-bedroom apartments. So 4 college kids are going to be moving in upstairs shortly. It's very close to UML, UMass Lowell. And then the downstairs unit, I have a couple roommates. And so, yeah, it's all kind of come along. It's in a good place now. And we're hoping to refinance soon. I think we can pull out some good money.
Yeah.
I'll go through the numbers real quick. So I have them written down just so I didn't miss anything. So purchase price was $665,000. Okay. Priced way below market. Part of the reason for that was we signed a deed restriction, and when we took over the deed at closing, we signed a legal document that gets attached to the deed that basically says we will not ask the tenants that live here to move out for 5 years, as long as they don't violate the leases that are in place.
Mm-hmm.
So it's basically like signing a 5-year lease. They're allowed out, but I'm not, unless they violate the lease. A lot of people don't like stuff on the deed. It would scare away a lot of people. We thought about it. I didn't mind them staying. Didn't know them yet. I didn't know if they were good residents, but they're Section 8, so I didn't have to worry about them paying. Mm-hmm. So anyway, $665,000 purchase price. It was a 6-family with 19 bedrooms. All the apartments are 3 bedrooms except for the 6th one, which is a 4-bedroom. It brings in about $135,000 a year in gross potential rents. That's when it's fully leased. And after all the expenses, the insurance, bills, utilities, everything else, the net operating income of the property is about $81,000 a year. So from that $81,000, $35,000 about goes to the debt service. So that's paying the mortgage. And you end up with $46,000 in cash flow every year. And so from that $46,000 in cash flow, you put some aside into reserves. So we do like 8% of gross potential rents every year just get put aside for reserves, just in case someday it's going to need this or that.
Yep.
And it comes out to about $36,000 a year in free cash flow, which is $3,000 a month, which is awesome.
That's crazy.
The pref gets taken from that. Preferred return goes right to my investors. The remainder gets split between us. I get 86% or 84% of the remainder. And it ends up, cash flowing really well. So, so that's kind of the overall of that property. We're refinancing now. It was appraised for $870, purchased $660, appraised $870, or no, $830. I'm sorry, appraised for $830, and I'm getting a refinance right now, and we're hoping it was appraised at a 10 cap, which is really high. Anyone who's looking for property right now knows that there's no 10 caps available on the market that are rent ready. So I think that appraisal came in low because the appraiser would have felt like a jerk appraising it for $500,000 more than it was being purchased for. But all the calculations I'm doing saying the thing should be worth $1 million.
Yeah.
Maybe even as high as 1.2. So successful BRRRR, we're going to refinance it, hopefully pull out more than we put in, and we'll be left with enough money, pay out all my investors. All their preferred returns go away once they make that much money back that they put in, and smooth sailing from there.
Dude. Oh my God.
Yeah. Now, this is the thing to take from this is, it's a really good deal. Yeah, I'm lucky that we came across it. Yeah, I put myself in the right place to come into this opportunity, but nonetheless, there's some luck came into play here, and we got a really good opportunity at a really good time, and I talked to the right person at the right time and was in the right place. But I would say that the thing to take away from it is you take the right steps, you do things in the right time, and you prepare yourself, and you're able to take down these opportunities when they come, when they present themselves, and the likelihood of that is higher when you put yourself in the right place. And so, do I think I'm ever going to find another deal this good? Yeah. Is it going to be easy? Is it going to happen next month?
Maybe.
I don't think so. Maybe. But realistically, I don't think so. But they're out there. And this is just goes to show that stuff like this is out there. It may be on the MLS because you see, we saw a presentation last night, you and I, where someone found an awesome property on the MLS that had a bonus apartment that was being sold as a closet. But sure enough, that's an extra $1,800 a month or whatever in value. Straight from that apartment. And, that was an awesome deal. And so most of these people who are getting started and doing really well, they came into these good deals and they are out there. But it's not the first one you look at. It's never going to be the first one you look at. So, yeah, that's the story. Successful Burr, number one. Can't wait to refinance, roll it into another one. If it's not as good, it'll still be good.
Yeah.
If it is as good, we'll buy two more.
Awful tough, yeah.
So yeah.
Oh my God. That is insane.
That's kind of the whole story. I've never really, explained the whole thing start to finish, especially not on camera. But yeah, that's kind of that's how it went down. So
that's absolutely crazy, man. I definitely want to stress, what you were saying a second ago about, just like putting yourself in the right position, to always like be ready for when these opportunities present themselves, and, always be networking and stuff. And even like, way in the beginning, of like the very start of the story, like from that first meeting, with John, and dude, like I absolutely love the slideshow idea. I'm like, I was so blown away by that. That's amazing.
Brought slides to Panera Bread.
Yeah. No, but honestly though, I mean, like you definitely don't come across that thing all the time, especially as somebody, looking for their first property, and like, you had everything like laid out, you were like, let's go, like I'm ready, let's do this. And then like to come right off of that and start going to meetups and start connecting with other investors, and like that's incredible, man. Like you went like
another thing just to add on to that, when this deal came to John before he sent it to me, I wasn't his only client at the time, right? But for some reason he sent that to me and not somebody else. And I think that presentation is why. If not, it was what was behind the presentation, and it was me and my background and where I was financially, and he knew that I might be able to actually close one of these things. But I demonstrated competency, and I demonstrated my ability to do what I said I was going to do, and I demonstrated that I was serious and I wasn't joking around. And I wasn't wasting time, and real estate wasn't this cool flashy thing that I was going to get bored of in 2 weeks and move on.
Exactly.
It wasn't Dogecoin. It was it was it was something that I had put a ton of thought into, and he saw that, and that's why that deal, I'm assuming, haven't asked him, but that's probably why that deal came to me and not somebody else. So that's important too, is just you don't just got to show that you're serious, you got to actually be serious and all that. So,
and that's a really big point, man, honestly. Like, like you said, I mean, some people might like just kind of stumble into it and be like, oh, it's kind of cool, but not be like the most active and, have that like ridiculous desire to like get stuff done, and like really jump in and get started. And, it's always like just really crazy, like when you meet somebody like yourself, that has that kind of mentality, like especially right from the get-go.
Yeah, I've met a huge range of people who, imply that real estate's cool, from someone who you're hanging out and they're like, oh yeah, real estate's cool, like I'm going to invest in real estate someday. And you can tell that's all they ever thought about it.
Yep.
You have other people who they get a burst of being serious, right? They get a burst of the same obsession that, many of us have, and they become really into it. They reach out. I've had people like this reach out to me. They want to take a phone call. They want to talk. They want to discuss, the stuff that I've done and the people I know and stuff like that. And then all of a sudden, a month and a half later, they disappear.
Yep.
And I don't know, maybe they're closing deals and I don't know about it, but something tells me that, that fire just didn't last, or it petered out, and they're going to rekindle it and get it going.
Yeah.
But then you see other people like you, and I think you're polar opposite, and what you're doing is awesome. So you haven't yet closed your first deal, have you?
No, I'm still looking for my first one.
But think about everything you're doing right? You're an even more extreme example than me in terms of setting yourself up in the right position. You're here talking to 40 something real estate investors for an hour on an interview. You're putting your name out there. I mean, people know you, and if they don't yet, they're going to start to get to know you just because of this podcast. You became a real estate agent. You're helping other people buy houses. You're on a real estate team, surrounded all day long by some of the best people, some of the best young blood in this market right now. And I mean, this Pints and Properties group, anyone in Lowell who's getting into it or early in their career, who's interested in real estate, they're the same people that are showing up at these meetups. It's most of them. That's all of them. I mean, I'm sure there's a few people who are doing great getting started without meetups, but for the most part, this is the crew who's blowing up in Lowell, at least this generation of it. And there's the top dogs who are all above all of us, and they don't come to the meetups, but we're the next generation of those people. And
you're right.
And being led by some great people who are, one step ahead of us, and people to look up to and all that. And we all have mentors, whether our mentors know they're our mentors or not, they are. And it's solid. I think you have something great going. I got something great going, and this whole crew has something great going. So
they definitely do, man. Thank you very, very much. It really means a lot to me. It does. And yeah, I mean, like this group especially, man, like has been absolutely life-changing, like ridiculously life-changing. From like meeting John and, the rest of the Candor team and Doug, shout out to all you guys, like everybody at the meetups and everything. It just like, it's a whole nother perspective, like on how you can live your life and, like just like giving value. And it's just something like something that you don't come across all the time. And like I feel like we're extremely blessed, to kind of like be around these kind of guys and stuff, and be able to have those mentors to go to. And like you said, like people coming into the meetups, still looking for their first properties and stuff, and be able to talk and shoot the breeze with them and bring them up as well, like just to have that like huge like central like-minded group, it's really something special.
A good place to meet new people. And I think, most of us, if not all of us, love helping out others and talking about it with others. And so, for example, not too long ago, you reached out to me. We didn't even really know each other. I don't think we had ever even talked to each other before. And you're like, hey, do you want to just hop on the phone and talk about real estate for an hour? And sure enough, we did. I was sitting in the parking lot at a Market Basket. I had to run in and, get some soap to clean the floor because one of my tenants spilled who knows what all over the stairs. And I was like, let's do this phone call. And so, we talked about real estate for an hour and kind of figured out who each other were. It led to us being here right now. And I love doing that. I love when people reach out.
It's so much fun.
I think on more times I've been on the end of the person being reached out to than the other way around. That's my flaw. I need to reach out to those people who are one step ahead of me more often. And nonetheless, we all love learning. We all love teaching each other, and it gives purpose helping other people succeed.
It does
just as much as it does, trying to succeed ourselves.
I remember that, man. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I probably DM'd you on Biggerpockets or something like that.
Literally, that's what it was.
And one thing led to another, and like you said, like here we are, and then I found out like that you knew John and you were working with John and you're at the meetups. I was like, oh no way, this is awesome. Like this guy's like, he's already like in this group, I'm like, I just haven't like ran into him yet, like especially with Biggerpockets as a network itself, like the people on there, like what I try to do every day, and like I found a ton of value in it, is like DM 5 people from different markets around us on Biggerpockets and do like the same exact thing, just be like, hey Matt, like my name's Kyle, I'm an investment focused agent, investor, looking for my first property, whatever, like I'd love to hear your investing story and connect or something,
Yeah.
and like just kind of like making those relationships. And I don't know if it's really, I feel like it's Bigger Pockets probably dominantly, um just like the crowd that's on there, like we
Yeah.
were just talking about, like people just constantly wanting to help each other and everything. Like, people are ridiculously friendly, like I don't think I've really met any like, mean, like selfish real estate investors, you know what I mean?
No,
Like,
yeah, me either.
yeah,
Me either.
and it's just like you never know who you're going to be working with.
Yeah.
Especially like to stem back to your the beginning of your story about some of the investors in like the equities kind of world, with stocks and stuff. Like just shooting the breeze with them, talking about real estate and stuff. And next
Yeah.
thing you know, like you guys are sitting down with another slideshow, which is amazing. And like shortly after that, like you guys are in like a 6-family deal. Like you never know.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like the Bigger Pockets community, it's a small world, but sometimes I assume everyone in real estate is on it. And like, for example, one time I met a young entrepreneurial guy who was bought a commercial multifamily and was working on it, and I was like, this guy's definitely heard of Bigger Pockets. And I'm like, oh, and I brought up Bigger Pockets. He's like, what's that? I'm
Hold
like,
up.
no way, you're joking.
You gotta check
You
this
haven't
out.
heard of this? Let me enlighten you.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, at the time he was ahead of me. I don't even think I'd closed the ones that I have yet. And sure enough, I mean, there's a lot of people out there who wanna do big things. And yeah.
Yeah.
So
I know it's so funny when that happens, man. Like, when you come across people that don't know about Bigger Pockets, and you're like, you're just kind of like shooting the breeze with them, talking about it, and then like they're not sure what that is. And like
yeah,
you said, hold on, like let me show you something. Let me enlighten you.
yeah.
You gotta
And
check this out.
and even a lot of people, like they hear real estate, they're like, oh, you're in real estate, and they think you mean a real estate agent selling homes.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
people don't even realize that there's this whole world beyond that. And I mean, people know that, yeah, there's landlords and investors and stuff like that, but they're everywhere, and doing all sorts of things. And a lot of them come from the trades and contracting and home home professionals that do things like plumbing and electrical and HVAC and this and that. And because they're in these houses all day, they're working for these landlords all the time.
Yeah.
And so that's why you go to these Bigger Pockets meetups and stuff like this, and you see a lot of people from that world. And it's because those are the smart ones who said, okay, I could keep fixing toilets all my life, which is great, and I could make great money doing it, more
Or
money than I'm making. But like, but wouldn't it be nice to be sitting at home and cashing that $3,000 a month that I was just talking about?
of course.
So.
Yeah, no, it really is crazy, man, and like I feel like you said, like people might have an idea about it, but I mean the vast majority of people are probably like, oh, like these guys are just regular landlords, like they have their building, congratulations. But like maybe might not have like dug deep enough to see like the absolutely life-changing power, for like you, your family, like generations below you, that aren't even born yet. Like just
Yeah.
like the power of it, even from like one building, like you
Mhm.
telling your story, like that first deal, man, like it's incredible, you know what I mean? And then like
And
to
it,
pick
and it
up a
relates
duplex
to
after and stuff.
Yeah, it relates to like thinking big and thinking that you can do, because a lot of people don't think they can. They think, oh, I don't have a lot of money in the bank, I could never, which is
Yeah.
just not true. I mean, yeah, having money in the bank helps, but um, I didn't have half the money I needed, and somehow I was able to find $135,000 or whatever to close, the 6 unit.
Yeah.
But even for me, I ran into a lot of situations where I put myself in like limiting beliefs, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, when I first met John, I thought I couldn't do a 5 or 6 or 7 unit, and he's like, no, let's go 3 to 6 unit multis in your MLS, emails.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was like, okay,
Sure.
John thinks I can do it. Another one, when I was looking at these this portfolio of deals that I was looking at buying, I saw, two that were cool. One was a house hack, one was the 6 unit. And I was like, John, what should I do? He's like, you should just bid on both, see if you win both. And I go,
All right.
okay. And I go, well, but what if I win both? And he goes, then you buy both. And I was like,
Okay.
okay. I didn't know I could do that, but he said I can, so I must be able to. So sure enough, here I am buying two properties. And I get to the, the closing table. And I'm standing across from Doug and signing paperwork. We're out in the parking lot because it's COVID and he didn't want anyone in his office, clearly. So we're out, doing paperwork in the parking lot. And he's like, "This is your first deal?" And I go, "Yeah." He's like, "It's commercial." I go, "Yeah." He's like, "I didn't know people did commercial on their first deal." And he's closing 1,000 homes a day or however many he does. So, once again, I wouldn't have done that if I, wasn't lucky enough to have someone who told me I could. And was able to shift my mindset. I was the same person before and after I thought I could do it. And sure enough, I could. So, don't limit yourself with what you think you can and can't do, or who you are or who you aren't. Or, people say, real estate's a relationship business. That's what I was told when I was young. When I first heard about real estate before I was interested in it. People are like, "Oh, real estate's good, but it's a relationship business. You have to know people." And I was like, "Oh, okay. Well, I don't know people, so I guess I can't do real estate."
That's it. Yeah.
But sure enough, we figured out a way to get to know people, didn't we?
Yeah, 100%.
Right? You have to know people. That's true. It's the truest thing I've ever heard. But you don't have to already know people. You can meet them, and they're not hard to meet because, as far as I've seen, I haven't met one person who didn't want to talk to me about it who was involved.
Exactly.
So
I feel like that's a really big thing, man, is like, definitely, I mean, like the same exact thing kind of happened with me, with that being told like, "Oh, you have to know people to do that." It's all in relationships, and people make it sound so negative. Like traditionally, I mean, very generally speaking, obviously, but like that's just kind of what we're taught. And like even now, like, I'll be talking about, different things that are going on to people who aren't really in like the real estate world, or like kind of think like that big, I guess, or like are that open-minded. And like I hear that all the time, and like it breaks my heart. I'm like, oh, like only if you like saw some of the stuff that you can do with this. Like this is crazy.
Or people hear something from someone they know and they think, that's the way it is, and they never look into it themselves. I have heard, I can't tell you, especially in today's real estate market, deals are hard to find, prices are high, everything's getting a ton of offers. And I hear people say like, "Oh, now's a bad time to buy a house. Now, you got to waive your inspections, you got to do this and you got to do that, and you should just wait." Now, either that's someone looking for a reason to not have to do something difficult, which is buy a house, or find a good house to buy. I can't tell you where the market's going in the future, and I think the reason for that is because nobody knows. Like nobody can know. Exactly. If we knew where the market was going to be in a year, the market would already be there. I mean, it's the same thing with stocks, right? Stocks are high right now. Some people think it's like general consensus, general knowledge, right? That the stocks are in a bubble and they're going to go down. I mean, you hear people say this, and sure enough, if that was actually the truth and a consensus and that was known, they'd already be down. It would happen overnight, right? The truth is people don't know where stocks are going to be in a year, 2 years. Yeah, sure. Someday they're going to go down. They always have gone up and down. But, I feel like anyone who tells you that, "Oh, just wait, the housing market's going to crash in a year and then you buy a house in a year," they might be waiting until they're 70 to buy their first house if they keep that attitude. You never know. Because it could just keep going. Like anyone who tells you they know what's going to happen is lying to you.
Exactly.
or misinform themselves.
100%. Yeah, I mean, like if everybody knew what was going to happen, like everybody would be billionaires, man. Like, or as Brandon Turner says, like, billionaires with 6-pack abs, like that analogy that he says. Like if you had the information, and like you knew what was going to happen, like great, like
Yeah.
so then it would be super easy. And like I haven't really thought about it before, but like everybody would be rich as hell, and like money probably wouldn't mean anything anymore.
Mhm.
Yeah, like if everybody actually knew, and
Yeah.
like it's
If even the smartest minds in the securities world, the big huge funds on Wall Street and stuff like that, like if they knew they don't know it's going down,
yep,
because if they did, they wouldn't own anything anymore. They would have sold it
exactly,
all,
yeah.
right? Maybe they wouldn't have. I don't even know. That stuff's above my head how it even
Me
works.
too.
It's insurance, but sure enough, I mean, I'm not saying I'm the most optimistic person in the market who's I think it's just gonna go up forever. And yeah, there's a lot of fundamentally questionable things that are going on in the economy, and a lot of things that look great too.
Yeah.
Sure enough, I feel like it's difficult to know. So why not, do the best thing for now, take the right precautions so that if it doesn't go well, you're okay and you survive.
Yep.
If it really is the end of the world, you're dead anyway, so it doesn't matter.
Exactly.
And if it stays where it is or it keeps going up, congratulations, you made yourself a fortune.
Yep.
I feel like that's the only right attitude. And I'm not saying don't be cautious. Obviously, buy the property that has good cash flow. Buy the property that can take a 20% dump in market rents and still cash flow.
Exactly.
And if you do that and you have enough reserves and you're careful, get out there and invest. Get out there and make moves. I remember in college, people were saying, "Oh, the stock market, the market's in a bubble. It's gonna." Sure enough, that was 2015, and now it's
still going.
2021.
Yeah.
We're still waiting. There's been some bad days.
Yep.
Bad weeks, but who knows?
Yeah, exactly, man.
So,
like I want to stem back on something you said a minute ago too about, like I guess taking advice from like the wrong people, I guess, like the people who aren't really like don't really have the knowledge of what's going on or think they know too much or whatever. Like,
yeah.
I mean, like just the way I kind of look at it now is like people are always going to be buying deals, like there's always going to be deals to be found, regardless of whether things are like fantastic or everything's at rock bottom, because like all you need is one.
You look at the like the worst time in the housing market in recent history after the whole 08, 09 thing.
Yep.
And who did the best? It was probably all those, maybe the banks that got bailed out, but who really did the best? And it was all those people who were snatching up properties for pennies on the dollar at these foreclosure auctions and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And sure enough, they weren't doing what everyone else was doing. Everyone else was saying, bail out, go home, take your cash and wait. So
it's unbelievable,
hard
man,
to know. But you said taking advice from the wrong people, and I think that's a gold thing to be aware of, because I've had in my own personal network people who aren't in real estate. You say you're interested in real estate, and the first thing they want to tell you about is about how you can lose money in it.
Yeah.
And
yep.
First of all, it's ignorant to think that I haven't already thought of that.
Exactly.
Of course you can lose money in it.
Yeah.
Most people aren't, right now.
Yeah.
Most people who are doing it carefully, and the vast majority of people who are doing it carefully, wisely, making good decisions, educating themselves, doing all the right things, are doing just fine right now. And yeah, when the market's bad, everyone's going to do poorly. But why are you taking advice from, or why should I take advice from somebody who's never, owned a commercial property before?
Exactly. It's not practical.
It's not practical. I'd rather go to someone who's 5 steps above me in terms of where they've been and what they've done, and they were in my shoes 15 years ago, and say, what do you think I should be careful of?
Yeah.
And they'll give you the real answers. They'll give you the, make sure it cash flows. If it doesn't cash flow and you think there's a really good, appreciation opportunity, that's okay. Make sure you have reserves to cover your butt when it doesn't go well. These are the kinds of like real advice that's important. That, the people who know the business, they'll give you the gold. They'll give you the gold about how to be careful, how to protect yourself, and do well. And they'll also tell you how to take advantage of, you know, difficult times and good times, and for your own, you know, benefit and your team's benefit and the people around you's benefit. So
100%, man. You
be
know, like,
careful who you talk to.
exactly. You know, I feel like it's a lot more important now, you know, to be able to decipher between that good advice, like the super practical advice, like you said, you know, from the mentors who might not know that they're your mentors right now.
Yeah.
You know, from the people that are like 1 step above you, 5 steps above you, like the people who have had a lot more you know, like time in whatever you're doing and a lot more experience. And to be able to decipher that kind of advice from somebody's opinion, you know, like it's kind of tough, because like there are people that are that can be very, very close, and like you like appreciate their opinion and watching out for you and everything.
Yeah.
But you know, you have to kind of figure out what that point is. We're like, all right, you know, like I appreciate your opinion, whatever, but I'm doing this anyways. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
it's like really close friends and family, and like these
Exactly.
people who
Yeah.
care about you personally more than anyone else in the world. And
That's tough.
you know, they're not hostile. They're not trying to. They genuinely just want to help you.
Yeah.
But you know, and I hear people say this all the time who are in real estate, is just be careful that
Exactly.
you know, take everything you hear, no matter who it's from, into your own consideration and make your own judgments of it.
Yep.
And be careful you don't let, you know, the wrong energy and the wrong mindsets and the wrong everything else impact, you know, where you are, what you do, and where you're going.
All right, guys, that concludes our Creating Wealth podcast episode for today. I want to thank every single person that has listened this far. It really means a lot to know that people can learn from me and with me as we build wealth together. Hopefully you can take home at least one thing from this podcast that will improve your life just a little bit. If you could, please check me out on social. That's at Kyle Curtin Real Estate on Instagram, Facebook, and I'm on Biggerpockets. Until next time, let's build together.